Okay, it is January 21st, 2019. And here's my next project. Kind of a big one I've been thinking about for a long time. And things just kind of lined up right, and I finally decided to go for it. So the project is to convert this mower into an accessible mower. I want to be able to actually drive my wheelchair into it and operate the mower. I'm certain I can do it. How involved I get is up in the air. First thought would be to simply extend the front deck, which would not be much trouble at all, and extend the handles. Not exactly what I want to do, but that would probably be the simplest. The most extreme idea so far would be to widen it by about 6 inches. I have peeked under the seat, and there's some components that are going to have to be rearranged, and it's not wide enough, but ideally maybe widen it so I could back in all the way to where the seat is, and if at all possible try to get the deck lower. Well, not the mowing deck, the frame, the platform where their feet would be. Haven't done a thing to it yet, just got it. Just picked it up a couple days ago. It is a brand new year old. It was last year's model, 2018. So it was a little bit cheaper getting last year's. But my helper, I sent him on a mission for a cup of coffee for me because I don't want to go out in the cold. It's like 8 degrees today. So he's going to grab a coffee for me and come back, and I'm going to have him start stripping this down. And then he's not big on being filmed, so I'll break in and show some progress and see what I encounter along the way. Now, worst case scenario, I can throw it back together and sell it come spring. But I do believe I'll be able to get it, and ideally I'd like to build a kit. A bolt together kit where you wouldn't have to do any major modifications to the existing part. So build my own bolt on items, but we'll see. That's the grand goal there. I know it can be done. There is nothing out there like that I have been able to find or see out there. Lots of other adapted things, but not a mower. But I will bring you back when we start getting some parts off this so we can really see what's going on under those side panels. Okay, it's still the 21st. A few hours later, like 2.5, I think. And Evan was here to help me take this thing apart, or take it apart with me pointing and talking. But there's the chassis, and there's the bodywork and deck and seat, bumper. Nothing major there. You better hide, I'm turning around. Uh-oh, I might have caught you by mistake. And here's the items that I need to figure out. They're the only ones that really cross the frame that will get in the way, but I'm gonna talk more about that tomorrow. I'll look them over a little better, but it was actually really easy for this to come apart. There was at most a half a dozen fasteners that were slightly annoying to get to, but most of it comes apart surprisingly easy. Pretty simple all in all, but I will hopefully do some thinking tomorrow and start making a plan. Okay, it's the next day already, and I've had some time to look at this and think things over. This video is just going to be me rambling on, so if you're like me and not big on the lot of talking, wait for future episodes. But want to cover the rough idea and what it looks like it's going to take. So there is the chassis. It is exactly 24 inches wide, and my wheelchair is exactly 24 inches wide. With everything pulled out of the way, I got lots of room. I should have grabbed a pointer. To back up all the way to the motor, pretty much. This, it's hard to get you the right angle here. This black box here is the parking brake. It's an automatic parking brake, so you can't roll down a hill accidentally. That won't be in the way, because that'll go between my rear casters, so I realistically can get pretty much right up to the motor. A couple things I gotta figure out, and I'll show the other parts of these. These gold hooks anchor the crossbar that is the pivot for lifting the deck. These gold rods are the linkage to the hydrostatic steering, so those will need to be offset to the outside of the rails. And looking at the back, I can't see it very well yet, but from what I can see, it looks like it's just a simple linkage that's pretty much vertical and just pivots. And the rod is on the inside of that linkage. I think I could move it to the outside and add a spacer and be able to come up in between the wheel and the frame to get it to the outside. And that will clear the deck. And then I'll need to put some kind of plate on there and some side skirts to keep me from going off the edge. And for now, I'm just gonna, well, not now, it's winter, but I want to just build basically a loading dock out in the yard that I'd have to pull up to and park it against, and then be able to back into it. Down the road, if I can get this working fairly well, it'd be nice to have a ramp that unfolded that's attached to the machine. But that'll get a little tricky because it's going to block the view. So that's the approach I think I'm going to go after on this attempt. I'm gonna have to jump around here. I do want to try to throw just a piece of plywood on here, and I'll throw a ramp up there and back up on here and see how it feels. Right now, as I sit in my chair, I am pretty much exactly what the seat height was on the machine. And this frame, I think, is 14 inches off the ground. It's 15. So I'm going to be 15 inches higher than where that seat was. So that trying to do a measurement right now. Pretty close to 24. So yeah, my seat is gonna be at my thumb there. So I'm gonna be way up there. That just seems like it could be a bit scary. But I'm gonna do that, see how bad it is, and try that first. The more complicated approach, which I'm not writing off, is I'd cut the frame back in front of the wheels here, I think, and bring it out. Wider and then drop it. But I got to get the deck back on there and see how much spare room there is between the frame and the deck to be able to lower this down. But you know, if I widen that, I'm betting, well, I should be able to at least pick up the depth of the frame to get me down lower. But that's obviously a big project. But we'll see. If it just seems too scary and like it could be tippy with me sitting that high, I may rethink that yet this year. But as far as just doing the deck, that so far looks pretty manageable to do. So I'm going to backtrack here. So I have got the gold hooks to deal with that crossbar, offsetting these to the outside of the rails. And there is one more crossbar I'll show you on the bench that was the seat, gas tank, and fender mounts. And that is over on the bench. So here's the cross member that the seat was on. And it really, the only things on this were the seat landed on the springs, obviously. There's 2 anchor points for the wiring harness, and the very ends are where the fender mounted. I'm missing something. Oh, and the gas tank sat on the other side. And so this point right there is where the gas tank sat. I do got to put that back up and kind of measure how much room is between the gas tank and the rails. But this should be pretty easy to fabricate, you know, something that would land where these points are to remount the fenders. If I even reuse the fenders, they might not be worth the effort. Once again, I'm going to mock that up. My helper's only here every other day, and only for a couple hours, so I got to work fast when he's here. This is the crossbar for the deck height. So that's almost with those pointing down a little more. Except more like that, but the crossbar sits right on the deck. There's little notches for these washers to drop down. So I could go over that. It's probably only 1.5 inches to at the most. But I really don't want to raise it that much. I'll have to look at it, but at a quick glance, I really don't see why this couldn't go through the frame rails and be totally under it. Maybe need to shorten these a little bit and get it totally out of the way. And I will have to also lengthen this crossbar So I would probably just make a new one, get a new rod and make all that new, and then I can just bolt this handle on. And the part I was most uncertain about when I bought it is this cross piece here in this smart speed control system. I'm like, oh no, what's going to be in there? And I do not fit between these, so they got to get widened. I think it's 2.5. I'm shooting for 24. Oh no, I am at 20 1/4. So 3 3/4. I got to bump them out. And I sat and thought about this quite a bit. I didn't really want to cut this apart. I was worried about getting it all lined up right again if I give up on this and bolt it back together. I'm trying not to do anything that's, permanently modifying any of it. And I just lost my train of thought. So I was looking at these and they look kind of complicated, but they really aren't. I think I could make basically this U-shaped component, and there's basically a little piece of tubing there that a spring mounts in, and it really doesn't look like it'd be that hard to make. So that was my first thought. Then I got looking closer at this thing, and maybe I'll show you more on the other side. I doubt you'll be able to see at the camera, but I got looking here, and they didn't get this square at all when they welded it. There is, get my head in your way. I don't know if you can see that. There is a gap. You probably can't. Right there. If I had to guess, it's more than a 1/16. Not an eighth, maybe 3/32. Is that doing my math right? 5/32. And this side's nice and tight. So it already isn't square. So that makes me a little less concerned about that. It'd be just cosmetic. I'd have to have it repainted if I cut that apart, because it is welded together. And let me turn this. So yeah, so if I widen this, I just got to widen the deck crossbar the same amount, and that should still line up with the deck height adjustment there. Okay, so I had a chuckle at they're advertising the smart, what'd they call it? Smart speed control. There it is. That is the smart speed control. I was thinking there's going to be some kind of microprocessor in there and be kind of complicated, but this is it. And all it does is move the linkage that comes in to the lever. It moves it closer or further away from the pivot point. That's all it does. So it just changes the stroke of that rod a little bit. And so I could just pick a spot and leave it there, or I could try to figure out a way to reroute this But initially, that's my solution. And then it's just adding probably a secondary rail outside the existing rails to rebolt this together. And there's nothing else in the way once that smart speed control is out of the way. I can just cut that. You add some tubing and really should be able to just bolt that back on. I do anticipate that I'll have to make new levers to get it in a position that I can reach. What else got to be remounted? These dampeners, if I put tubing on there, they'll bolt right back to that tubing. That should be in a line. So realistically, there's not that much in the way. And that's kind of what I was hoping for. I've been thinking about this for more than 2 years. Could be 4 years. I keep looking at them every time I go somewhere. So, the guy is back tomorrow. And I think what I'm going to do is actually put a couple of the mounts back in. I want to see where the plastic goes. More than likely, I'm going to leave them off altogether. Let's see if I can cause an avalanche here. It's either that or... Ooh, I better be careful. I forgot the gas tanks in there. Yeah, if I try to leave them on and I offset, let's say 2 inches, I'm going to have to cut into this plastic or offset it out that much. I guess 2 inches should be manageable. Now I'm just thinking out loud, sorry. But that's what I got to figure out. So I'm going to put them back on and just get the cross member. There's one little perch on the side of the deck. We can set the gas tank and fender on and get some measurements to see what it would take. You know, if I just widen them 2 inches, that would be pretty simple. Everything would go right back together like it was. The starter solenoid I will probably relocate. That was bolted right next to the parking brake. And man, I think that is really it. If I'm lucky, the control console, whoops, I'm not going to be able to reach that easy. About my head. Yeah, so yeah, I would bet I could move that out a couple inches too. It's kind of nice how this came apart. There's just a notch, so you don't have to disconnect any of the wires or throttle, choke lever, nothing. Just three screws, and this pops right out of the way. Most everything on this was really that easy. If somebody was familiar with it, I bet it would only take an hour to get it to this point. So I think that's all I got today. And as I said, tomorrow hopefully I can get up on there and get the fenders and bodywork positioned and see what I need to do, and hopefully we can get going on it then by Friday. That'll probably take a couple hours tomorrow, and maybe start trying to actually cut things apart Friday. All right, I'm going to throw this one up just as an intro to the project, and thanks for watching.